All right, y'all, welcome back to the last part of my Swatching Copic Markers series. This is part 7, and we'll be swatching from 3 different sheets, which is cool gray, neutral gray, tonal gray, warm gray, and I do have a colorless blender, but I don't have any of the fluorescent colors. So I have this group right here. I don't have too many of these. I'm always adding. I wish I had all of them, because they're so great for shading and they build up really nicely and work together. But like I keep saying, it's a process and I'm building my collection slowly. As a refresher, if you're joining me for the first time in this series, in this part, there are 6 parts before where I swatch all the Copic markers that I own with the Copic Swatch Cards on this beautiful premium bond paper. This is great to have as a way to use for planning your rendering, your illustrations, your fashion design, whatever it is, to be able to see what you have. And in my case, as I'm slowly building my collection, there is for every color group, from blue-violet all the way down to the beautiful earth tones. And this is really a handy tool to have. I highly recommend trying this out if you're building your collection. It comes with a lovely pouch, so you can keep everything nice and neat. And along with this, I also recommend the Copic app, so you can see colors, list which ones you own, which ones you want. I love my wish list. I'm always adding to it because I add to my markers gradually, as they are a little bit more expensive, but I believe they're worth it. They render beautifully, and with Copic markers, if you're not familiar, you can refill them. So the marker lasts a really long time, and the minute the ink is done, you can get the Copic refill. And you're not buying new markers, you're just refilling your existing markers. They also have the brush tips that you can buy to replace if they get worn or dried out. I do have a video for you of how to switch the tips in my channel, so check that out if you're not sure. But today we're going to focus on swatching all the grays. They're not all cool. Some are tonal, warm, and neutral that I own, and I'll share with you some of the uses, especially if you're starting off in fashion illustration or fashion design, or you're just getting familiar with what you can do with Copic Sketch Markers. As always, I do like to remind that this is a particular type of paper. So if you're rendering on marker paper, which is what I have back here, you would still want to swatch your colors to see how they look, because they do take to the different types of paper. When I render my PaperDolls, for example, I use mixed media paper, and that has a thickness and a bit of texture. So I'll sometimes swatch on scraps of paper that I have of that so that I can see. But I do also love swatching on marker paper. It's a great layout for me, and I can kind of see all the colors. So I don't discourage using this method, but with the Copic Swatch Cards, you kind of have a library of the markers that you own, especially if you're building your collection gradually, and you can kind of easily pull and take a look at the colors as you're planning your color palette. So for example, the other day I started working on a new group of PaperDolls, and I didn't want to start pulling all the markers yet for rendering. I just laid out these Copic swatch cards, and I could kind of see everything and get a sense, because I already had an idea of what the color palette was going to be. But if I wanted to check real quickly, you know, how does one color work next to another, this is really a handy tool to have. And again, it's so you know your library of colors. So I'm super pleased with this purchase. I've been wanting something like this. I even created my own sheet, but it was just 1 square per color, and it was just regular copy paper, so it faded really quickly, and it wasn't as beautiful and easy to handle and store and have all the names and everything. So if you're looking for a tool to make your life easier, tracking your markers, seeing the colors that you have, this is really fantastic. One of the things that I've loved of this process as I've been filming these videos for you all and showing you which markers I have is I kind of get a sense an inventory of what I have and how I want more markers. Of course, that's, I don't know if that's a downside or not, but it also helped me discover which markers need to be refilled or need their tips changed and so on. So a handy little process that I'm a happy outcome, if you will. When it comes to the cool grays, I actually only have two. I have Cool Gray number 1, C1, and Cool Gray number 3. These are two markers that we were required to get when I was in fashion design school because those are really handy for creating shadows. So let's swatch those. With the grays, they are all good for shading. But on their own, they're also really great colors because we do design clothes that are different shades of gray. So they have dual purpose, and C1 and C3 are a good starter point. Personally, I want all of them, but these are the two that I have. So again, using the chisel tip of the Copic Sketch Marker, not the brush side, we're going to put a little pressure and we're going to do 3 strokes. So that's 1 from the second box, 2, and last but not least, 3. As you can see with C1 Cool Gray, look how beautiful and light it is, and then how it can build. So you can build with it or pair it with C3 to create deeper shadows. Again, this is backwards to the label of the marker because I refill this one often. So C3 Cool Gray number 3. As you can see, obviously all of these are going to work together well because they're in the same color story or family, if you will, and they are all buildable, so you can go from very light to really dark, and I only have these two. So let's hop over to the neutral grays. So like I mentioned, in school we were only required to have these two cool grays for shading, and I wasn't really familiar with the neutrals, but in recent years I've dived in, and this is probably the largest group that I have. Well, warm grays as well. I love discovering new markers and new colors and how they can work with my paper dolls. And when I was looking for specifically a black that wasn't black, like I don't want it to be so intense that I can't get a nice gradation or shading for if it's black pants or a skirt or a dress. So N10, neutral gray number 10, is so good for that. And if you have some of the lighter ones, you can get really nice highlights as well. So I really love my neutral grays. The first one that I have is N5, neutral gray number 5. Oh, beautiful. As you can see, the difference of how the cooler grays have a bit more of that blue. The neutral, of course, balances out so it doesn't pull to one way or the other. The warmer gray, you'll see, has more of those warmer tones. And then we have tonal, which is also really cool, but I only have one of it. So I won't be able to show you too much of the variation for the tonal grays. A recent addition to my Copic collection is N6. So for the longest time I had N5, N7, and N10, and I was looking for the middle here to use all three for creating pantyhose and creating that transparency on the skin. And those pantyhose were for my Helen Sharp Death Becomes Her paper doll, and pantyhose is the bane of my existence, trying to create the light enough tones that you can see the skin shining through and the darker tones so it looks like black pantyhose. That one is a fun challenge. I'm always trying to improve my technique, so not something I'm necessarily ready to share with you all yet, but as soon as I have a much stronger technique, I will. Next is N7 neutral gray number 7. You can see how with this gray, you are almost getting dark enough that you can kind of build it for a more charcoal black if you're going for, say, like distressed jeans or distressed pants or something like that, and you want to be able to show the lighter tones that you would have in a fabric like that. It also works well with N10 when you're building up the two of these together to create those highlights and those shadows for black. I love N7 in general for fall color palettes when I want something, again, if it's military inspired or if it's kind of more intense the way you would have in a fall color palette. And so I use my neutral grays a lot. All right, the last of my neutral grays is N10. This guy is a little overfilled, so hopefully we don't get a mess. So it might be a little hard to see how the lighter tones and how it builds, but you can see how it really works well for black if you don't want too intense and too dark for your rendering, and then you have a little bit more buildability. Obviously, I can't wait to add 8 and 9 as well. Moving on to the next sheet, which is tonal and warm grays, I only have T6. I only recently started getting acquainted with this side of the grays, so I purchased this for a group because I wanted something, again, this was all part of my pursuit for the pantyhose. And with, I keep calling this tonal, it's toner gray. I wanted something that would help me have that transparent effect, so I went with 6. I don't wind up using it because I'm able to do it with my C's, my C1, my C3, my N5, and N7 to create the pantyhose effect for Helen Sharp from Death Becomes Her. But I am curious to incorporate these more. I did use it in a fall group collection for my PaperDolls. You can see it in my channel, but it's definitely a whole world that I'm not familiar with. So it's toner gray, not tonal gray. Now we have the warm grays, which I've recently been diving into more because I find that it works well, again, when you're creating soft shadows for white clothing, and that's why I purchased W0. And again, chiseled edge, a little bit of pressure. Look at that. So similar to E40, that brick white that I was showing you in the previous part of this series, this can work really well for light shadows for white clothing. And of course it builds up nicely with warm gray number 1 and number 3, which I will show you next. And the last one that I have in this batch is warm gray number 5. So another great warm gray. And one that I use often is W1 warm gray number 1. And obviously you can see how these work and how, if you're trying to enhance your shadows, how you could use these. And they definitely work well together if, again, it's a garment that you want to push a little bit more the shadows, especially for the lighter color tones and for a warmer color palette. You can see side by side, and again, this is another perk of these cards, how there's more blue tones in the cool grays because they're cooler, and how there's more of a soft warmth, a yellowiness in the warm grays. So again, depending on the balance that you're trying to create with your color palette for your illustrations or designs, consider which suits better. If it's a more spring, summer, warmer tones, the warm grays might work better, or if it's a more winter, fall, cool tones, the cool gray may work better. Next up, warm gray number 3, W3. What I also like about warm gray number 3 is if you're going for a lighter khaki, a softer, more like a darker stone color, and again, you want to work with all three, it is, to me, very much that kind of color. So I think it works really well if that's the direction that you're going with your illustrations or designs. And finally, the last one that I have is W5, warm gray number 5. It's a small jump, right? Because we've got only number 4 in between. Look at that difference. They work really well, of course. And again, this is a much more intense color, but I think really great. And I've recently been incorporating and having fun with the warm grays. I've been attracted to them more than the cool grays. So I do recommend, if you're not familiar with the warm grays, to give them a try. Last but certainly not least, and I mean, we're not really going to be able to see it, but we're going to swatch it anyways, is Colorless Blender 0. So if you're familiar with Copic markers, you know that you can use this to blend your colors. For example, I was doing a sort of nightgown group of paper dolls, and I wanted a really nice ombre effect, but the colors were not progressive in the same color story, for instance, of 3 blues or something, where you could just blend using those 3 blues, and I was able to blend nicely from like a pink to a purple to a blue with the help of the colorless blender. All right, so this is the last card. I don't have any fluorescence. I'm always tempted, and I don't have the 2 blacks. These have not appealed to me. Like I said, I prefer N10 for that. I am always curious about these, and when I took a peek in the Copic app at the swatches, I'm like, oh, these would be fun, you know? So potentially in the future, there's so many other colors that I want, if you saw my wish list, but these are certainly fun, and I can't wait to add to this sheet as well. All right, y'all, so that concludes part 7 of this series, where I swatch all the Copic markers that I have using the Copic Swatch Cards, which I'm really excited about, and happy that I was able to share that with you and that you could all see the process of doing this. I think it's a lot of fun. It's really satisfying. The sounds are awesome. And it's a nice way to get inventory of where you're at. If you watched the whole series, you know that we had some duds, ones that needed refills, and I wasn't able to swatch for you all. And I didn't have the refills on me, so I need to get those refills and swatch the, I believe it's 3 missing colors, but it might be more. And knowing myself, when I get those refills, I wouldn't be surprised if I also got a few new markers. So moving forward, I will be sharing with you all when I get new markers, and I will swatch them on their appropriate swatch card. So if you enjoyed this series, you know what to do. Thumbs up, comments, subscribe, join me as I continue on my journey of adding to my Copic collection. Of course, I'm always going to share with you the refill process and new colors that I get in, and of course my paper dolls, which is where my heart truly is, and that's my passion and my art that I love sharing with you all. So be sure to check out this whole series. If you've gotten all the way to here and you've watched every part of this series, You're amazing, and I appreciate you, and I can't wait to share with you more. If you have any questions about color combinations or how to plan a color palette, or if it's, you know, how do I create red hair or blonde hair or anything like that, let me know in the comments. I would love to share my knowledge with you. As always, thank you so much for joining me today in the studio, and I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you enjoyed this series, and I look forward to seeing you in my next video. Bye, y'all.